Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the Strobe Light Show.
Our next guest and client is someone you might have heard of or even read. She is an author and her sixth book, Namma Bangalore, is just out. She's a columnist with Indian newspapers like Hindustan Times, Mint Lounge, and Abu Dhabi's The National. She's also an independent journalist with bylines in reputed Indian and foreign publications like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Atlantic, Guardian, Condé Nast, and Gourmet, to name a few. She has a Master of Science degree in broadcast journalism from Columbia University, New York. She has won the James Beard MFK Fisher Award for Distinguished Food Writing and a Pulitzer Fellowship. She has created content for radio, TV, and digital platforms on textiles, art, jewelry, food, wine, culture, and relationships. She's also served in many leadership positions for many distinguished organizations.
If you haven't already guessed, my next guest is Shoba Narayan. Hi Shoba, welcome to the Strobe Light Show.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you because I feel we're a bit of kindred spirits here.
Yes, indeed. And share lots of things.
I know. But I'm going to borrow or steal a very lovely compliment that Edina Schramling gave you. She's the writer for Los Angeles Times and the New York Times, food writer. And she said, you're a rarity who has a wonderfully unique story and who has the lyrical skills to tell it. And that's a wonderful combination for a writer. You find cows in elevators and you write a book and columns out of it. So what has been the journey for you as a writer?
So Anupama, I think what you said about the lyrical quality and the unique story is not unique to Indians. All of us have unique stories. But the editor who hired me for my first job in India, which was to write a column for Mint Lounge, his name is Raju Narisetti. He said my beat was to find stories in the everyday. So I think that is what all of us have a beat in journalism. My beat is I'm very curious about the everyday. I find humor in India in unexpected places. I find the people fascinating, and there are so many stories to find. So.
Yeah, but I agree with him. To find a story in the everyday, that I think this is the power of observation that a writer brings, right? Like you've written so much about food, and your recent book, which is on food and faith, and you take the prasad that we get at various temples and you've made a book out of it, and how wonderful. If it were me, I would just eat the prasad and be very happy with it. But tell us, how many places of worship did you visit to put this book together?
About 20, and that was culled down to participate in the book. Originally, I wanted it to be north, south, east, west. I wanted, as a secular nation, I wanted to include every faith that is there in India. The unfortunate thing was every faith does not have this concept of sacred food. My Jain friend said that doesn't exist. I wanted Parsis. I wanted, there is one shrine from Islam, which is the Ajmer Dargah. Christianity, even though a lot of them have feasts. So I got very excited and I said, even in Shivaji Nagar, the St. Mary's Feast it's called, but it's not a prasadam. It is the concept is different, and so to include that would have been sort of unauthentic. So I did use one Christian, I set the Christian faith in Goa, and but it's largely a Hindu faith book because prasadams, or as we call it in South India, or prasad in North India, are unique to this religion. Judaism, there is one section which is set in Mumbai, but again, that is not intrinsic to the faith. So the beauty of the book, I think the takeaway that I got from the book is that it is faith and food are intrinsic in Hinduism, because you can write about faith from many angles, including art, including aesthetics. But food sort of balances it out.
Was there any particular moment where you thought that I could spin off this act of receiving the prasad or tasting it into a book?
So Anupama, I wish I could take credit for the idea. But actually the idea came from an editor called Kamini Mahadevan. She, I think, has retired now, but she used to be with Penguin. She took me out for a coffee. I used to live in New York then, and she was the Indian editor for my first book, Monsoon Diary. And Kamini said, you know, Shoba, why don't you write about food and faith? And she called it sacred food and gave a list. She said, do the pal payasam of Kerala and all that. So the idea came from her. Of course, it took a decade, and I moved to Singapore and then to India and all of that to happen for the book to come about. But so it wasn't, it's a good story though. Maybe hereafter I will use that. I'll say I popped a prasadam or a prasad in one place, and then the idea sprung up.
Yeah. So when you talk about food, I see that there is an underlying layer of your deep interest in spirituality as well. And you've also written for Belief Net and all of that, right? So where does that come from? Is that an interest that has been with you from the time you were a child?
Both Shyam, the founder of PeakAlpha, who happens to be my brother, and I grew up in our mother is very religious, still is, and it was a strong thread in our household where we were exposed to temples, gurus, the Sri Vidya cult, and the trajectory I followed was to sort of rebel against it. But I think now in my 50s, I'm returning to it. So food and faith in a way was to come to terms with all the problems I have with faith, and make my peace with it.
Coming back to your one of your earlier books, which is The Monsoon Diary, which became a very, very famous book. I think you also got a review for it on Oprah.com, right? Yeah. How easy or difficult was it to choose or cherry pick certain incidents that you included in the book?
Yeah. In Monsoon Diary, the stories I say about external people, for example, the istriwala, the guy who comes to sell milk in our households, was all very easy. The harder part is when you write a memoir, is to pick and choose stories of people who are close to you. And my husband is a very private man, so that was really difficult because he doesn't want to be a character in any of my books, and I don't know how to write any other way. So that character was very hard. Parents less so. So in that sense, when you pick and choose characters, especially if it involves people who really don't want to be characters, that is the difficult part of any memoir. And when you write a memoir, it's very easy to tip the scale to hagiography, where you're sort of praising all the time. But good writing comes from the point of where there is conflict. It comes where the dark and the light, it's in that space where you have to, I was taking a class, online class with Amy Tan, the writer. It's called masterclass.com. Anyone can take it. And one of the first classes where she says how to write a good novel is, she says, the 4 questions she lists were you afraid of at any time of dying? When were you betrayed? And how did you feel about it? So she basically says, go straight for the jugular, go straight for the place where fear resides, where anger resides, where rage resides. That's where good stories are. So Monsoon Diary, in that sense, it's a very light memoir. It's not intense, it's humorous. Ruth Reichel, who's an editor I respect, loved it because it tries to be authentic without being dark. But I still, as a writer, I feel it could have been a whole lot better because it doesn't plumb those shadow emotions, what Carl Jung calls the shadow emotions. I hope to write fiction at some stage in my life in which I hope to access those places.
Tell us about your writing process. I've seen pictures of your table littered with paper.
Yes. So Anupama, you draw with a paper and pen. I am an app junkie. Anybody tells me a new app, I download it. So I use Procreate. I try to handwrite on an app called Sketch.
Right.
So I try really hard now to write with a fountain pen on paper. Anything to spur the creativity, we all do. But most in a book, the writing process so far for me has been on a computer only, not. So how does it happen? In writing, I'll tell you about Monsoon Diary, because so the way it worked is I submitted a 150 word essay on food that won an award from the New York Times, and then an editor at Gourmet magazine said, take that 150 word essay, make it into a 1,000 word essay, and then an editor at Random House saw it and said, let's make it a book. And the way it works in the US to make it a book is you write a proposal, a 30-page proposal of the book. So in that sense, I had guidance for that book. Return to India, my second book, which is really close to my heart because I was living abroad and I wanted to urge Indians to reconsider coming back home. So in that sense, it was actually a sort of call to action. But it got roundly rejected everywhere because early on, because everybody said you're talking about the Indian immigrant story, but you have to make it universal to non-Indians in some way. That is a skill that I couldn't get. And so it took 10 years after first round of rejections for this book to come into being, because universality of a story is very important, as you know. So that was that. And so every book had a different trajectory. Some, like Food and Faith, came as an idea from an editor. Katha, my book, was actually another idea from an editor, Dibakar Ghosh at Rupa Publications, who called and said, why don't you write about storytelling? And then Namma Bangalore. Actually, we wanted to call it Namma Bengaluru, but we found that in Amazon, the search is for books on Bangalore, not Bengaluru. So my book is Namma Bangalore. It is a group of essays on Bangalore. So that is how the trajectory of the book happens. As far as the writing process goes, I'm pretty good about maintaining a routine. I'm pretty good about writing. There's a great line that says, the amateurs wait for inspiration, the writers just get right down to it. And a study that was done which compared writing from people who said they were inspired and compared writing from journalists like us who had to do it, not much difference in the quality. So I keep that in mind and I just get right down to it.
You also write columns every week.
Yeah.
And I think that is a hugely, something that calls for a lot of discipline. How do you do that? Because you write for the Mint.
Yeah.
And you have been writing for quite a while now.
Yeah, I've been a columnist since I moved to India in 2005. And see, the thing, Anu, is I have done things that come easy to me. So writing a column somehow comes easy to me. What is hard now, and it's a Herculean struggle, is fiction, which I've never done. But column writing, idea generation comes easy to me because and actually I'm very good with deadlines. So there have been days when I write the day before, but usually I have 3-4 ideas and I write it and keep it. And so columns are also 800 words is a good size for a column, as you know. And the process of it is usually you work on an idea. The good times is the idea is crystallized in your mind and you sit down and write to it. Of course, there's research you have to do that improves it and all that. The harder times, what happens is you think you have an idea and then you start writing it and you realize it's not an idea, it's just a line. And then the column goes through many
iterations.
Iterations, and it gets to be a nightmare. So there are, I would say 60% of the columns are the iterations where you just sort of work through the idea as you write it and multiple drafts. 40% is a breeze where the idea is in your head and it comes out nicely.
But thank you for this very honest look at your process, because a lot of people romanticize the art of writing itself.
Yes.
So what is special about food for you? Because it informs so much of what you write.
Yes. I think there are many ways to access a civilization. Some writers access it through history. I know you love textiles and your style and beauty, so you've accessed it through that. I'm a terrible cook, Anupama, but I'm a good food writer.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I can't cook to save my life. In this house, my husband cooks. But I find I'm decent at describing food, and I'm able to link food with memories and situations and characters. That skill I will cop to. Cooking, don't even bother.
How do you react to criticism? Sometimes it can get very nasty and snarky, right?
Yes. Somehow, I think each of us develops a skill, a way of wrapping our head around all the people who criticize us. We take it personally. Time is a good healer because you feel really rotten for a while and then it goes away.
I know a lot of writers have one or two people that they go to run their copy by, or to...
I used to do that.
Do you have somebody like that?
I used to do that. Once you get into the mood of column writing, I don't do that anymore. I think I marinate ideas with different people depending on the idea. Narayan, because he is interested in the humanities, a lot of the ideas I marinate with him. I'm very opportunistic that way. I'm very opportunistic about whoever I meet. I sort of brainstorm with them about ideas and something will click.
And your other interest is birding.
Yes.
And you also have a podcast, so tell us about it.
Besides writing, I have interest in textiles like you. Wine, maybe like you.
Yes,
yes,
like me.
And birding, which is a big interest. So bird podcast marries my skill and my interest. I've been doing this for some 10 years now, or 13 years. I think I started in 2010. So I was not one of these kids who has done it since age 7. What is hopeful and wonderful for me is that you can develop these serious interests if you're lucky at any age, and they become consuming. So birding, Bangalore has a huge nature community. So Narayan was saying, in fact, he used the word inclusive. They are very inclusive of newbies. You don't have to posture. They put you at ease, they welcome you, they teach you, not in an hit you over the head way. So it's a wonderful community that I'm part of, and it exposes me to a facet of Bangalore which is very interesting. And Bird Podcast came as a result of that. A friend of mine, Ullas Anand, and I decided to do it together. And we are now at some 75 episodes.
Wow.
So,
good.
Yeah.
You've immersed yourself into a city which is, for all intents and purposes, kind of foreign for you.
Yes.
Because you're from Chennai, then you went overseas, and then you've come back, and then you've become so well fitted into this puzzle called Bangalore.
Yes.
How did that happen?
For that, I have to call out my mother and mother-in-law in that. My mother, before Navratri, when we were growing up in Chennai, she used to take a walk. So the equivalent would be here before Navratri to just go to Malleshwaram market. And I would say, why are you doing this? She said, I have to get the mood of the festival, and you get the mood of the festival if you go to the markets. So that stayed with me. So now I love walking the streets of Bangalore because you never know what you will find. And my mother-in-law doesn't say no to, she says no to very few things. And I think as a journalist, if you every opportunity that comes to you, you say yes to, something will emerge.
So this is a question I ask all my guests, but for you, I'm going to make it slightly different. You've watched PeakAlpha take shape, grow, and you've had a very ringside view of it. So tell us what it was to see it becoming a business from an idea.
It's a source of great pride because, as you know, Shyam is my brother, my only brother, and Priya is my sister-in-law. They were PeakAlpha, they ideated PeakAlpha when we moved from Singapore, and for about a year and a half we were staying together with them. And I saw the process of ideation. They were our sanctuary and home in Bangalore when we first moved here. So that was when PeakAlpha was ideated, and then to see it take shape, to see it grow, to see it win awards, to see it make lots of good decisions, and to see how Priya and Sham deal with every business has obstacles, but what matters to them is integrity and trust from clients, to see their core values play out in their business. And we live in the same complex, so I get bits of it every time. One or two things I'd like to highlight is Sham and I are very close, but he never discusses his clients with me. I don't know, usually somebody else will say, oh, we are also clients at PeakAlpha. So he's extremely discreet, has always been. If I had a secret to tell about something about parents or whatever in college, I knew that it would not go far once I told Sham. So that is it. Both he and Priya are extremely passionate about their clients, and they are sort of do-gooders. They want the best for so that to watch that has been marvelous. Priya is very empathetic and she's very kind. So it matters to her. So for me, also the other side, as a family member, I see how she takes it in. And for me, as a sister-in-law, it is to help her relieve the stress of it, So I see how personally she takes it. And for me, it's about telling Priya, you shouldn't take it so hard. You shouldn't take it so personally. So, but we are also clients of PeakAlpha, and they've managed our money fantastically. Our children they are the guardians of our children. So as a sister-in-law, somehow their when they have trouble, it is troubles for me as well. So that has been the beautiful balance, to see how much they care for their clients, how much they deal with it, and how to help the Priya sort of unload it. And Sham, of course, there's no question of unloading, because he doesn't tell me anything about PeakAlpha, which I think is a beautiful thing as a business owner, to keep that separate. But the journey has been one of pride. I mean, I'm thrilled that the business has grown so much. I want it to grow even more, and I'm very thrilled to be a client. And I am biased, but I'm thrilled.
Thank you, Shoba. So lovely having you, and also a great lesson for me in how to write, how to take inspiration and convert it into written form, which is always wonderful. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
For me, this episode has been personally very enjoyable. Talking to Shoba, who's a renowned journalist and a wonderful writer, I've been able to pick her brains and find out what is the actual trigger or the moment that sparked so many wonderful books. And as she said, she looks at people as opportunities, which is wonderful for a journalist, because we are alive, active, and observant to the stories that we then get to share with you. And at PeakAlpha, we do the same. We're always looking for opportunities to grow your wealth, to make you feel secure with the finances that you have. We're going to leave you with links to Shoba's website and her podcast, and also links to PeakAlpha's social media handles. Please follow us, and we wait to hear from you about who you would like to see next on our show. Goodbye.